I didn't mean to send it to her, but once she saw me, nothing was safe anymore. Princess Elara Aurelian learned early that silence could be mistaken for grace. At 16, she mastered the art of standing perfectly still while men twice her age debated her future like a trade route. At 20, she learned to smile while foreign princes appraised her like a treaty clause. At 26, she had become a symbol, elegant, restrained, untouchable. And utterly alone. The palace of Aurelian rose white and luminous against the evening sky, marble towers catching the dying light. From the outside, it looked like peace. From the inside, it was rules stacked upon rules, tradition pressing down like stone. Elara dismissed her attendants earlier than usual that night. I won't need anything else, she said gently, voice practiced. Good evening. They bowed and left, the doors closing with a soft finality that echoed too loudly in the cavernous room. Only then did Elara exhale. She slipped off her coronet and placed it on the vanity with more care than necessary, as if it might shatter. Silk sleeves slid down her arms as she loosened the formal gown required for dinner. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself, composed, distant, eyes trained to reveal nothing. This wasn't how she felt. She reached for her phone, the modern intrusion into an ancient world. One place where she was not your highness. Where she could simply be Elara. The woman she'd met at the diplomatic gala had messaged earlier, something teasing, something warm. Someone who didn't bow. Someone temporary. Safe in her own way. Elara smiled, just a little. She raised the phone, caught her reflection in the dim light. Hair loose now. Shoulders bare. The princess without armor. A breath. A click. She didn't look closely at the name before pressing send. Rowan Vale had been trained not to react. Not to raised voices. Not to threats. Not to fear. So when her phone vibrated against her palm, she barely moved, only shifted her weight, eyes scanning the corridor on instinct. The palace was quiet, guards posted at intervals, torches flickering in their sconces. Routine. She checked the message. And everything inside her stilled. Rowan didn't swear. Didn't inhale sharply. Didn't move at all. She simply stared. The image wasn't explicit. That wasn't the problem. It was intimate in a way far more dangerous. Elara's eyes in the mirror weren't guarded. They weren't distant. They were searching. Open. Human. Rowan locked the phone instantly, heart slamming against her ribs. 3 years. For 3 years, she had protected the princess with a devotion that bordered on obsession. She'd memorized escape routes, meal schedules, diplomatic tensions. She'd taken blades meant for Elara's shadow, stood between her and crowds that could turn in seconds. She had also fallen in love. Quietly. Hopelessly. Without permission. Rowan had never allowed herself to imagine Elara wanting anyone, let alone her. A bodyguard was meant to be invisible. Loyal. Replaceable. This shattered the careful distance she'd built. She stared at the door to Elara's chambers, pulse loud in her ears. Inside, the princess was probably realizing her mistake. Rowan straightened, jaw tightening. Duty first. But her heart had already disobeyed. Elara realized 30 seconds too late. Her stomach dropped, heat flooding her face as she stared at the screen. Captain Rowan Vale. The last person who should have seen her like that. Her protector. Her shadow. The woman who never crossed lines. Elara paced the length of her chamber, silk whispering against marble. Rowan hadn't responded. The silence was unbearable. She typed, deleted, typed again. Elara. Please ignore that. It wasn't meant for you. I'm deeply sorry. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands clenched in her lap, feeling 14 again, exposed, foolish, trapped by her own carelessness. Outside, Rowan waited. Minutes stretched thin. Finally, the phone vibrated. Ilara's breath caught. Rowan. I would never think less of you, Your Highness. Relief washed through her, followed immediately by something sharper. Another message arrived. Rowan. But I won't pretend I didn't see you. Ilara swallowed. Her fingers hovered, heart pounding louder than the rain beginning to tap against the windows. Ilara. And what did you see? The pause that followed felt endless. Outside the door, Rowan closed her eyes once, just once, before replying. Rowan. A woman who deserves to be seen exactly as she is. Ilara pressed the phone to her chest, breath shaking. For the first time in her life, someone hadn't looked at her crown first. And nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. The morning after the message, the palace felt different. Ilara noticed it first in the smallest ways, the way servants avoided her eyes a beat longer than usual, the way whispers softened when she entered a room. Paranoia, she told herself. Royal nerves. Nothing more. But when she stepped into the corridor outside her chambers, her breath caught. Rowan stood there, as always. Same uniform. Same composed posture. Same unreadable expression. And yet. Their eyes met, and neither of them looked away. Good morning, Your Highness, Rowan said, voice steady. Ilara's heart stuttered. Good morning, she replied, then hesitated. Captain. The word captain landed heavier than it ever had before. They walked in silence toward the council wing, footsteps echoing in measured rhythm. Ilara was acutely aware of the space between them, not quite enough to be formal, too much to be intimate. She broke the silence without meaning to. Did you sleep at all? Rowan's gaze flicked to her, surprise briefly breaking through discipline. Enough. It was a lie. They both knew it. A group of nobles passed them, bowing. Rowan shifted subtly closer, instinctive, protective. Her arm brushed Ilara's sleeve, just fabric, just a moment. Ilara inhaled sharply. Rowan noticed. She always noticed. The council chamber smelled of polished wood and old power. Ilara sat at the head of the long table, hands folded neatly, crown in place. Around her, advisors murmured, shuffled papers, smiled too politely. Rowan took her position behind the princess's chair, eyes scanning, body angled ever so slightly toward Ilara. Always ready. Your Highness, Chancellor Morin began, clearing his throat. We are pleased to inform you that negotiations with the Kingdom of Virel have concluded favorably. Ilara's smile was automatic. That is good news. And, Morin continued, as part of the alliance, Prince Adrian will arrive next month. A pause. For the formal announcement of your engagement. The room blurred. Ilara's fingers tightened in her lap. She did not look at Rowan, but she felt her. I was not consulted, Ilara said softly. A ripple of discomfort moved through the council. Your Highness, Morin replied carefully, this has been expected for some time. The people are not the ones being married, Ilara finished, voice calm but sharp. Behind her, Rowan went still. Ilara stood. This discussion is over. For now. She left the chamber with her spine straight, pulse roaring in her ears. Rowan followed. They didn't speak until they reached Ilara's private wing. The guards bowed and withdrew at Rowan's signal. The corridor emptied. Ilara stopped outside her chamber door. They're going to cage me, she said quietly. Rowan's voice came low. I won't let them. Ilara turned. You don't have that power. Rowan met her gaze, something fierce and unguarded in her eyes. I have my loyalty. And if your loyalty is tested? Ilara asked, barely breathing. Rowan stepped closer, too close now for propriety to survive. Then I'll choose you. Silence. The door loomed behind Ilara, half open. She reached for it, then stopped. Rowan, if you cross this threshold, she whispered, nothing will be simple again. Rowan's hand brushed the doorframe, not touching Alara, but close enough that the heat between them was unmistakable. I know. The door closed behind them. Not fully. Just enough to leave the world outside uncertain. Prince Adrian of Virel arrived 3 days ahead of schedule. The palace bells rang at dawn, bright and celebratory, cutting through Alara's restless sleep. She stood at the window of her chambers, watching banners unfurl in colors that were not her own. Too soon, she thought. Behind her, Rowan fastened the clasps of Alara's formal gown with practiced efficiency. Neither of them spoke of the night before, of the door that had closed almost fully, of the space between breath and confession. Rowan's fingers brushed Alara's back once, unintentionally. Alara shivered. Captain Vale, Alara said carefully, returning to form, you will accompany me to the... Rowan inclined her head. Of course, Your Highness. They slipped back into their roles like armor. The courtyard glittered with polished steel and expectant smiles. Prince Adrian dismounted with easy confidence, handsome, charming, perfectly aware of it. Princess Alara, he said, bowing deeply. More radiant than the rumors. Alara smiled. Welcome to Aurelian. Adrian's gaze flicked past her, brief, assessing, landing on Rowan. A formidable guard, he remarked. I assume she's yours. Rowan's jaw tightened. She is sworn to me, Alara replied coolly. Something unreadable passed through the prince's eyes. The palace galleries were designed for admiration and surveillance. Alara walked slowly between marble statues as nobles drifted around her, conversation stalling and restarting in careful tones. Rowan stayed close, every sense alert. Your Highness, Lady Selwyn murmured, falling into step beside Alara, how fortunate that your captain is always so attentive. Alara stiffened. Captain Vale does her duty. Of course, Lady Selwyn smiled. Still, one hears things. Rowan caught the shift immediately, the subtle tightening of Alara's shoulders, the quickened breath. They were being watched. That evening, Rowan intercepted a junior guard near the west wing, one who stammered too quickly, eyes darting. They're asking questions, he admitted. About you. About how often you're alone with her. Rowan dismissed him with a nod, heart heavy. They wouldn't tolerate this. Not a princess who hesitated, not a bodyguard who lingered too close. When Rowan returned to her post, Alara was waiting. They're circling you, Alara said quietly. Rowan met her gaze. Then I'll stand where they can see me. That night, rain lashed against the palace windows. Alara paced her chamber, agitation radiating from her. Rowan stood near the door, tension coiled tight. I won't marry him, Alara said abruptly. Rowan's breath caught. Your Highness. No, Alara turned, eyes blazing. Not him. Not anyone. I won't live my life as a symbol anymore. Rowan crossed the room in 3 strides before she could stop herself. Alara, she said, dropping the title without thinking, you're asking for a war. Alara laughed bitterly. I was born into one. They stood inches apart now. The air felt charged, dangerous. You saw me, Alara whispered. That night. And you didn't look away. Rowan's voice was rough. I don't know how. Then don't. The line between them snapped. Rowan's hand came up, hesitant, reverent, hovering near Alara's cheek without touching. Waiting for permission. Alara leaned in. Their foreheads touched. Not a kiss. Something far more terrifying. Trust. Outside the chamber, footsteps paused. Someone listened. The footsteps outside Alara's chamber retreated slowly. Rowan caught it immediately, the subtle pause, the deliberate quiet that didn't belong to a passing guard. Her hand drifted to the dagger at her thigh, not drawing it, just grounding herself. Alara noticed. Someone was there, Alara whispered. Rowan nodded. And they wanted us to know. The door remained closed, but the damage was done. Suspicion, once invited, spread fast inside palace walls. At dawn, the summons arrived. Captain Rowan Vale was ordered to appear before the Royal Security Council. Alone. Rowan dressed in full uniform, movements precise. When she entered the council chamber, she found Prince Adrian seated beside Chancellor Morin, fingers steepled, expression polite. Captain Vale, Morin said. Questions have been raised about your closeness to Her Highness. Rowan met his gaze without flinching. My loyalty is unquestionable. Adrian smiled faintly. Loyalty can take many forms. Rowan said nothing. Silence was safer than the truth. Elara received the news an hour later. They can't do this, she said, rising from her seat as Lady Selwyn delivered the message with feigned sympathy. Rowan has done nothing wrong. Nevertheless, Selwyn replied, it has been decided. Captain Vale will be reassigned to the northern border. Effective immediately. Exile. Elara's chest tightened painfully. Rowan was summoned to Elara's chamber under the pretense of final instructions. When the door closed, Elara's composure shattered. They're sending you away because of me. Rowan stepped closer. They're sending me away because they're afraid. Elara's voice broke. If you leave, I won't survive this place. Rowan took Elara's hands, fully, openly now. No more hovering. Then come with me. The words hung between them. Elara stared. I can't just disappear. You can, Rowan said softly. You can choose. Outside, the palace waited to decide her fate. Inside, Elara decided for herself. They left before dawn. No procession. No farewell. Just a servant bribed into silence, cloaks pulled tight against the cold, horses waiting beyond the east gate. Elara paused once, just once, at the threshold of the palace grounds. All my life, she said quietly, I thought freedom would feel louder. Rowan squeezed her hand. Freedom is often quiet at first. They rode hard through forest and fog, toward the northern passes where the kingdom's reach thinned and the future widened. By midday, the bells of Aurelian rang behind them. Not for celebration. For alarm. Elara did not look back. And in the palace, Prince Adrian stood at the council window, watching riders vanish into the distance. She chose, he murmured. The Chancellor frowned. Then we must decide how far we are willing to chase a runaway princess. Far away, Elara leaned into Rowan's shoulder as the road opened before them. For the first time, she felt unafraid. They reached the northern border at dusk. The mountains rose sharp and dark, snow still clinging to their higher peaks even as spring softened the valleys below. The road narrowed, the air thinning, the world growing quieter with every mile. Rowan slowed the horses near a small riverside settlement. No banners, no guards, no royal insignia. Just lantern light and the smell of bread and smoke. This is as far as the crown reaches, Rowan said. Beyond this, we choose who we are. Elara dismounted stiffly, legs aching. She looked around, at the mud, the low stone buildings, the people who glanced at her without recognition. No bows. No titles. Her chest loosened. I don't know how to be anyone else, she admitted. Rowan smiled faintly. Then start by being Elara. They took a room above a tavern, paid in coin that bore no crest. Inside, the space was small, one bed, one window, a table scarred by use. Elara laughed softly. Well. That settles it. Rowan hesitated. I can sleep on the floor. Elara met her eyes. Don't. That night, they lay side by side, not touching, listening to the river outside. Sleep came slowly, but when it came, it was the deepest either of them had known. Days passed. They traveled deeper into the north, taking work where they could, Rowan as a guard, Elara as a scribe under a borrowed name. Each morning, they woke together. Each night, they learned the shape of one another's silences. The wanting was there, constant, humming beneath every glance and almost touch. It broke one evening in a cabin borrowed from a grateful merchant. Elara stood by the hearth, firelight gilding her hair. "Rowan," she said quietly, "are we pretending this isn't happening?" Rowan set down her cup. "No." "Then why haven't you kissed me?" Rowan crossed the room slowly, as if approaching something sacred. "Because once I do," she said, voice low, "I won't be able to stop choosing you." Elara's answer was simple. "Good." Rowan kissed her like a promise, slow, reverent, hands warm at Elara's waist. Elara kissed her back like a decision finally made. When they parted, breathless, the world felt steadier. Peace never lasted. Rowan noticed the signs first, tracks that didn't belong, a rider seen twice where there should have been none, questions asked too carefully. "They've sent people," Rowan said one morning, scanning the road ahead. Elara nodded. "I expected as much." They made camp early that night, fire low, cloaks drawn close. Elara watched Rowan sharpen her blade, movements smooth and deadly. "You'd fight them for me," Elara said. Rowan looked up. "I already am." That night, a shadow moved beyond the tree-line. Rowan was on her feet instantly, blade drawn. A man stepped into the firelight, royal insignia hidden, but not forgotten. "Princess," he said, bowing slightly. "You are requested to return." Elara stepped forward, spine straight. "I am not lost," she said. "And I am not yours." Rowan moved beside her, unwavering. The hunter's smile faded. Behind him, more shapes shifted in the dark. The chase had truly begun. The hunters moved fast. Steel flashed as Rowan shoved Elara behind her, blade already singing through the cold air. The first man went down with a cry, shock written across his face as he collapsed into the snow. "Elara, run." Elara didn't. She grabbed the fallen hunter's dagger, hands steady despite the chaos. Years of court lessons had taught her posture, poise, and now, precision. They fought back to back, breath clouding, boots slipping. Rowan took a cut along her arm. Elara felt the jolt of impact as she struck someone who underestimated her. It ended quickly. The survivors fled into the trees, leaving blood dark against white. Rowan turned immediately, hands gentle despite the urgency. "Are you hurt?" Elara shook her head. Then she saw the blood soaking Rowan's sleeve. "No," Elara whispered. "You are." They found shelter in an abandoned watch hut before night fell. Rowan sat heavily, jaw tight as Elara cleaned the wound with shaking fingers. "You should have told me," Elara said softly. Rowan exhaled. "About what?" "About how good you are at killing." Rowan gave a short, humorless laugh. "I was trained for more than guarding doors." The truth came in pieces. Rowan had not been born noble, but she had been shaped by the crown. Taken young, trained in a quiet program meant to produce loyal weapons. She'd escaped only when a superior officer crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "They erased me," Rowan said. "Or tried to. Serving you was penance. And purpose." Elara cupped Rowan's face. "You were never a weapon to me." Rowan closed her eyes, leaning into the touch. That night, they made love slowly, no fear, no hesitation. Just two women choosing each other in the aftermath of violence, binding wounds that weren't only physical. By morning, Elara had decided. "They'll never stop," she said, watching sunlight break over the mountains. "Not while they believe they own me." Rowan nodded. "Then we make them believe something else." Elara sent messages, not pleas, but declarations, to border lords, guild leaders, and allies her family had long ignored. She spoke not as a princess begging to return, but as a woman offering change. Word spread faster than the hunters. When a delegation arrived days later, they didn't demand surrender. They bowed. "Your Highness," the eldest said carefully, "the people are listening." Elara looked at Rowan, who squeezed her hand. Then let them hear me clearly, Elara said. Far away, in the palace of Aurelian, bells rang again. This time, in fear. They returned to Aurelian without banners. No royal procession announced Elara's arrival, no trumpets heralded her claim. She rode through the gates beside Rowan, cloaked in travel-worn wool, hair loose, eyes clear. The guards didn't stop her. They bowed. Word had moved faster than any army. Border lords had pledged support. Guilds had frozen taxes. Even the northern regiments, long ignored, had sworn loyalty not to the crown, but to Elara. Prince Adrian waited in the council chamber, tension carved into his smile. You've made this difficult, he said. Elara met his gaze calmly. No. I've made it honest. The council tried to speak, tried to reclaim authority, but the room had shifted. Power no longer sat in tradition. It stood, breathing, choosing. I will not marry for alliance, Elara said. I will not rule alone. And I will not hide. Rowan stepped forward then, visible to all. This is Captain Rowan Vale, Elara continued. She stood between me and every blade you sent. She stands beside me now by choice. Silence. Then, one by one, the council rose. And knelt. Elara was crowned at sunrise. Not inside the cathedral, but in the open square where the city gathered, merchants, soldiers, children on shoulders. No jeweled coronet weighed her head. Instead, she wore a simple circlet of silver. Her first decree was spoken without flourish. The crown exists to serve the people, she said, voice carrying easily. And love is not treason. Cheers rose, then tears, then laughter. Rowan stood at her side, no longer in uniform, no longer in shadow. Later, in the quiet of their private chambers, Elara removed the circlet and set it aside. I don't need it in here, she said. Rowan smiled, soft and certain. You never did. They lay together as evening fell over the city, the weight of the world finally balanced between them. Elara rested her head on Rowan's chest. Promise me something. Anything. Never let me become untouchable again. Rowan kissed her hair. You're human. That's your strength. Outside, bells rang, not in warning, not in command. But in celebration. Because a queen had chosen love. And in doing so, had changed everything. The apple trees were in bloom again. Elara watched petals drift across the palace garden, white and pink against the deep green of spring. She no longer counted the years exactly, only the seasons, marked by harvests, treaties signed without bloodshed, and mornings that began without fear. Behind her, footsteps approached that needed no announcement. You're thinking too loudly, Rowan said, warmth threading her voice. Elara smiled. Am I ever not? Rowan slipped an arm around her waist, resting her chin against Elara's shoulder. Time had left its marks on both of them, fine lines earned honestly, a faint scar at Rowan's forearm that Elara still traced absent-mindedly when they lay together at night. In the garden, a young girl laughed. Asha ran between the trees, hair flying, wooden sword clutched in one hand as if it were a treasure. She skidded to a stop in front of them, grinning. Did you see that? She demanded. I won again. Rowan raised an eyebrow. Against whom? Asha gestured vaguely. Everyone. Elara laughed, the sound easy, unguarded. Of course you did. Asha was not of Elara's blood, but she was theirs in every way that mattered. A child brought to the palace after the northern unrest, too sharp-eyed for her age, too stubborn to be ignored. Rowan had taken one look at her and said, she's staying. Elara hadn't argued. Asha darted off again, chasing petals this time, leaving the two women alone beneath the trees. Do you ever miss it? Rowan asked quietly. The old life? Elara considered the question honestly. I miss who I thought I had to be, she said at last. But not who I was. Rowan nodded, understanding. She always did. The bells rang in the distance. Midday, not an alarm, not a summons. Just time passing. Elara turned, taking Rowan's hands, grounding herself in what was real and present. We changed something, she said. Not perfectly. Not forever. But enough. Rowan smiled, eyes soft. Enough is everything. Asha's laughter echoed back toward them, bright and fearless. Elara watched her go, then looked at the woman who had once guarded her door and now guarded her heart. Thank you, Elara said quietly. For never looking away. Rowan kissed her, slow and familiar, beneath the blooming trees. And if the kingdom remembered them, it wasn't for scandal or rebellion. It was for this. A queen who chose love. A woman who chose her. And a future that carried their courage forward, unafraid.